Awesome. I'm trying to get my picture up here. Not quite sure how to do that, Vij. There I am. Let me just pin my video there. Hi, everyone. Nancy Forster here, the Executive Director of Canada's National EFT Tapping Institute. Hold on, I said our name wrong. The National EFT Training Institute, nefty.com. Welcome, everybody, to the webinar tonight, Compassion Fatigue, the Cost of Caring with Vij Richards. It's very exciting. We had about close to 50 or 60 people signing up for our webinar tonight, and we're international. We've got the NEFTY community, of course, which goes all the way across Canada in the northern states, but we have people from around the world, England and France and various other countries, so welcome. Now, the way we'll conduct the webinar this evening is Vij will take us through the material that she's prepared. I know you'll have some questions or comments as we go, so if you would put those in the chat box, please. If you're new to Zoom, you should see a bottom menu which gives you the option to do chat. If you just click on that, it'll open up a box for you where you can put your questions in there. I'll monitor that chat box and then bring the questions to Vij as she's ready to entertain them. If you haven't already, if you would just mute yourself and stop your video. Usually if you're on a computer, laptop, the mute button and the stop video button are down on your left-hand side. That would be appreciated too. And I think the last point that I need to make is that we are assuming familiarity, at least to some extent, with EFT, with the tapping points. So Vij won't stop and teach those points. She'll just be taking us through the points in her exercises. So as usual, you need to take responsibility for your own use of EFT in this webinar. So let me just say a little bit about Vij. Vij Richards is just completing her advanced EFT practitioner certification and accreditation with the National EFT Training Institute. And as part of that certification, she has been putting together this presentation on compassion fatigue and the cost of sharing. So that's where this fits in and why we have the privilege of hearing what Vij has to say. Vij comes to EFT with a very strong nursing background, and her private practice is in Milton, Ontario. Website is miltontherapist.com if you want to connect with her. And she also works with staff members at one of our Ontario hospitals and does an awful lot of work around compassion fatigue, of course, in that setting as well. So let me throw this over to you, Vij. I'll take myself off the spotlight here.
Thanks, Nancy.
Figure out how to do that and find you and make you the most important person in the room.
Okay. Are we ready?
We are. Go right ahead.
All right. And I just wanted to do a shout out too, because I think my niece in England might be listening to this presentation, if not to the recording. So hi, Kimmy out there in England. And also to my colleagues at work and to some past and present clients and the NEFTY community and the FD community too. So welcome, welcome. This topic is very near and dear to my heart, as I will share the cost of caring. And you know, it touches most of us in our lives, right? And particularly for women and mums, and not just, I have a nursing background, of course, but it's also for teachers, for police officers, for probation officers, for anybody that, you know, if you're not in that profession, but you might be a caregiver, you're in that sandwich gap. So there are so many of us dealing with this topic. So let's look at this image of the rope at the top of the screen here. And you see this rope, it's just this tension there, there's a tightness. And, you know, have you ever had a day where you just feel like you're going to snap, right? It's just right there. And then look at the picture below. And this is my husband and I. We were doing a drive out to Key West And you know, how many roads are there these days where there's no traffic on the road, and there's water on either side, and there's blue skies and open road and endless possibilities. And when I look at that picture, I have an openness and a compassion, a caring. It's just very open and freeing. And then, you know, go back to looking at that rope image and the tension that that feels, and just to recognize yourself when you look at those two images, how that conjures up for yourself, how you're feeling. And the images for me is portraying the continuum of health, you know, our mental health and good health. And there's a lot of stuff in between that, but it just reminds us to check in. This is what I'm hoping to teach you, is to check in more often than we maybe do, to sense our, you know, the sensations that we feel, our body awareness, and how our body as a container takes us through this life, and how we can connect with ourselves and to others. So let's begin. So in the agenda, I would like you to just grab a piece of paper, a pen, or if you're, I know Monica, you're sitting in the car there, so I don't know if you've got notes, something you can take. Then we'll just do a breathing exercise before we begin. And for any of you, like Nancy said, please take care of yourselves for your responsibility and self-care as I do this presentation. I'm going to go through some terms used for the cost of caring and an ABC approach to compassion fatigue. And then we're going to learn 3 components of self-compassion, and then adding energy psychology, which you all are aware. I'm hoping you have the tapping tools for yourself, and then just giving a different perspective, all of that. And hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A, but I would like you to ask questions as you go along. So I'll just have some pauses for reflection, and then I'll check in with Nancy and she can let me know if there's any questions coming up. Okay. So as we write down your 3 stresses, I want on the pen and paper, what I'd like you to do is write down 3 things, just three that are currently that you're dealing with at work or home. And if nothing's coming up, do you have any areas of discomfort or pain in your body? And write those down. So just taking time to use this time to appreciate that you're coming from busy days, whatever you've done to land in this seat, to be here with me, to watch this webinar, to be grateful that and appreciative of this time that you're giving for your own self-care. So hopefully everybody's got a couple of things written down on this piece of paper. And then just turn it over and put it down to one side. And the coherent breathing exercise, as we go through, there's a few practical things I'm going to pass along as a way of caring for yourself. So coherent means an equal number of breaths in and out. So however you're comfortable breathing, whether you can count to 4 or 5 or 6, and then do an equal number of breaths out, whether you focus on your nostrils or your lungs or your expansion of your belly as it rises and falls, however you're comfortable doing that. So I'm just going to count in up to 4 and then hold it for 2 and then breathe back out again. So let's do that together. And breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, and breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And last time, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4. And just notice if that allows you to be more present in this moment and just leave the last piece of your day behind and to connect here. And again, if you need to tap, then do continuous tapping. So here's some of the terms used for the cost of caring. Compassion fatigue is actually not a standard definition. It's one that I learned through my Train the Trainer program with Frances Mathieu. She does an online program. She also does a school in Kingston, Ontario, if anybody's interested to look that up. But as it turns out, when you're good at what you do, it puts you at risk for the cost of caring. It puts you at risk for compassion fatigue. It could also be called empathy fatigue. But it manifests as an erosion of our compassion and refers to the profound emotional and physical wearing down that takes place when healthcare providers are unable to refuel themselves. And this was me when I was a young mom in my 30s and 4 small children and trying to go to school and being one of those super moms thinking I could do it all. But I didn't know the signs. I didn't know the worst signs. I didn't know what I was looking for. So I was, very proud and thinking, everybody else looks like they're doing okay. So why am I not? So is there something wrong with me? So that was, I didn't see the signs. And so I was not able to take good self-care and was required to take a couple of months off work to figure all of that out. And that's what's called compassion fatigue. Another term is used, vicarious trauma or secondary trauma stress. And this has been used to describe the profound shift that workers experience in their worldview when they work with clients who've experienced trauma. This repeated exposure to difficult stories or events, or witnessing an horrific scene. So just as you're even reading these words, difficult story or witnessing and horrific, for some of you that might be triggering past stories. So again, take care of yourself. Healthcare providers may find it difficult to rid themselves of the experience and become intensely preoccupied with it, almost like PTSD symptoms. And this experience can alter your view of the world you live in. For example, if you witness a plane crash, it may no longer feel safe for you to travel on a plane. And I know when I'm listening to the staff in the hospital, as they listen to some very difficult stories, as you do as practitioners, where do these stories go? And as they accumulate, it doesn't matter whether you're a newbie and you've been new to this field or whether you're an experienced practitioner, that there is nobody immune to compassion fatigue. And both compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma are experienced by the helping professions only. Another term is called burnout. That's the only term that I was aware of in the 80s, and is also a physical and emotional exhaustion resulting in the depleted ability to cope with the work demands, resulting in low satisfaction, feelings of low control, and high stress. I had a young man recently come to me at work, and he was an environmental associate, and so he was going through a breakup of his marriage with a couple of small children, and he asked his supervisor if he could have some flexible hours in order to look after the stuff he needed to do. And his supervisor was a very results-orientated man who wanted him to attend his work duties and was not empathetic to his situation. And so over time, this resulted in low satisfaction, feelings of low control, and high stress. And he needed to take some time out and reconsider this job that was not meeting his demands, and to be able to take some time out to look after himself. So he did suffer burnout. This condition can be experienced by any worker in a helping profession and non-helping professions too. And the last term that's used for the cost of caring is called moral distress. So this results from the inconsistencies between your personal beliefs and the needs of your clients. So as I'm in the hospital, there's a recent, in the last couple of years, been a process of assisting patients in suicide. And often these patients will request the nurses that they want to be present in the room when they die with their families. And for a nurse making that decision, it may be morally distressing if it's not in her religious practice to be present to this, if she doesn't agree with that standard. And so that's one example. But as an EFT practitioner, it may be easy for you to discern on intake if you feel able to support a new client. But what if you're about 10 sessions in, when the relationship's been developed, and then you get this new information, that may not be in your area of expertise? What is your belief system? Do you hold on? Do you refer? Do you seek supervision? What are your resources? So again, it can be morally distressing for you to consider all of those options for yourself. The real cost of caring in Canada is 1 in 5 Canadians will have a mental health condition in their lifetime. I believe in Europe it's 1 in 4. Some people may say that's higher, but only 1 in 3 asks for help, and that was me. And it's sad that, as I'm nearing my retirement in the hospital, I feel this number is still, unfortunately, it's still high, and that people are still uncomfortable with the stigma of mental health to ask for help. And I just think, I'm passionate and compassionate to share this work that is important to break down these communications and the mental stigma that we still have in our system and in all workplaces, I feel. And 500,000 people are off work in any given week, and it's costing our economy $51 billion. The World Health Organization says, there is no mental health without physical health. There's no mental health that can be no true physical health without mental health. And I so agree with that statement. So I want to take you to the handout that hopefully all of you received as you signed on to this webinar. And maybe, Nancy, if you could bring that up, we can take a look at.
I will. So this handout was sent out in the multiple emails that you sent to all of us. So everybody has it, but just in case, we'll bring it up on the screen here. Can you see that, Vij? Okay.
Perfect. Just a little to the left. Can you move that over just a touch?
Oh no, is this going to be like moving a piano?
That's okay. Leave it. I've got one in front of me, so I'm good. Yeah, okay, so the A is standing for awareness. So it's so important, even though there is not a standard definition. If there was, and we had compassion fatigue or whatever name they want to eventually call it, the academics that they agree on, you could go to your doctor and say, I have compassion fatigue, and there would be a plan of care and a diagnosis to do that. But we do know enough about recognizing the signs that this is important information to share. And I want you to be able to have this tool as a handout so that you can use it and reuse it over and over again. So as you look down on the buckets and the headings here under physical, spiritual, emotional, behavioral, and psychological, who hasn't gone home with a headache or an upset stomach or tension in their neck, shoulders? Any one of those things can be a sign. And under emotional conditions there, your lack of purpose or meaning, or feeling lonely, or your self-worth or self-esteem. And behaviorally, and I find for women more tend to break down, not that I want to stigmatize here, but men I hear in the healthcare field get irritable, and they'll distance themselves, and they feel uncomfortable when they start to have signs of overload and too much that's going on. And psychologically, when you start distancing and you feel this inability to cope and this guilt and shame that can come up because you expect yourself to work through this, and this professional helplessness that can overcome. And it can set up anxiety and depression, which, as you saw from the slide before, which is a very real phenomenon that's going on. So as you look at all of those signs, I want you to be able to recognize, maybe three in the boxes, and to use this and to write down what are your signs that you're recognizing for yourself right here, right now. And maybe to put that in the box. And then we'll just go back out of this slide, Nancy, and I will get back into mine. Do you want to continue? Yes. Is that right?
Well done, Vij. It's almost like we practiced this.
It does, but I didn't think I came back on the right one. So let me just see. Where am I going here? Oops, we did that one. And the A with the awareness. So again, we went through the emotional, behavioral, psychologically. And that little girl holding the hands up saying, I give up. We don't want you to give up. We want you to be able to recognize the signs here so that we can have a different approach. But I'm also going to use the traffic lights as an analogy of checking in with yourself, because I think traffic lights are universal. And when I see traffic lights, we all know that green means go. But energetically, what does that mean for you? And maybe write in the chat box, what does go mean? For me, it's I've had a good sleep, my relationships are good, I've rested, I've got energy to go, like I've got a full tank, and that I can face the challenges in the day. And just check in, Nancy, if anybody else is saying anything different than that.
Yeah, so we've got someone saying balance.
Balance, yeah.
Feeling grounded and able to get things done.
Yeah, great. Yes, that all means green, doesn't it? It feels good. There's an expansion, there's an openness, and you're ready to face the day. So when yellow hits, that's a slowdown, it's a caution sign. And what's happening there? Well, so write in the chat box again and just say a few things that might be coming up for you. For me, when I ask this question at work, they may, for nurses, they'll be saying, well, somebody's called in sick, or somebody is, there's a code that's happened, so it slows down your operations and your ability to do the tasks that you're expecting to be doing. On a personal level, it could be, somebody could be sick and you have to call in sick yourself because you can't go into work. It could be illness. It could be a family member, a relative.
And we have an honest soul saying, not sure.
Not sure. Yeah. Sometimes you can feel off and not know what's happening, right? That subconscious is alerting you to something, but you haven't been able to bring it up into conscious to say what that's about. So yeah, the not knowing is a definite, the uncertainty and not knowing is a big part of our energy, and it informs us.
Yeah, and someone says it feels like my brain is grinding through, but able to get it done, but less patient with relationship issues or specific issues.
So true, so true.
Or only able to do the bare minimum in my day. Yeah.
And that's if you're at the bare minimum. So then what happens when we hit the red light? We haven't known the signs, we haven't recognized them. And so here we are, 500,000 people in any given week are at this red light because they haven't recognized the signs.
Yes, red, not moving forward, stop, not safe.
Yeah, not safe.
Right? Depression, breaking down physically.
Yeah, all good, all good.
Yeah, my body usually says no, disconnected.
Disconnected, yeah.
Too sick, too sad, too anxious to go to work.
Yeah, all good. So you can use this analogy of the traffic lights personally, or you could also take it as a tool into your workplace. And what I would like for people to start checking in and asking, when you pass the traffic lights, it could be a cue. It's to how are you feeling? Where are you at? You know, which light are you operating from? Are you at the green, yellow, or red? And if you're in a green and you've gone into a yellow, what takes you back from the yellow back into the green? So if we're recognizing, we increase our awareness that we don't, you know, we can prevent getting into that the red zone. That's going to be the stuff that we're going to learn. Any other comments that, Nancy, or is it all good?
No, I think we're good.
We're good. All right. So that's the A for awareness. So now we have awareness. We're going to go to the B. The B is for balance. And this is your checking yourself and your self-care inventory. So that bottom boulder is your solid foundation. And when we build on that, there is a balancing. But when we get off balance, you know, things fall apart very easily, right? And so in my terms, I use regulation. Our nervous system is regulated. And then when life throws us these curveballs, get dysregulated. And what is it that's going to get us back into the green zone to get regulated again? That's what is important. So if we could go to, I'm going to stop sharing. So you can bring the second page up of the B for balance, Nancy.
Okay, I can do that.
Oh, look at us. I'm so proud. We're doing so good.
Got a little thing here. Not sure what that's doing. That's great. Can you see?
So we're going to slide that up. Yep. So we're on the self-care inventory. So this is a lot of information on the screen. I won't go through all of it, but it's under the same buckets. This work was taken from social workers, I believe, Karen Sackfickney and Laura Ann Perlman, that has written a lot on compassion fatigue. And they created a lot of these suggestions for the balancing. And when I say balance, I'm not meaning you need to balance up your, you know, whether you eat, sleep, you know, go to do your religious or support or community responsibilities. I'm talking about the balancing of yourself, you know, when you're dysregulated to regulated, that kind of an energy balance. So it's under the same buckets of physical, spiritual, professional, and psychological. And as you're reading through these, as I'm talking to you, maybe use this time to take an X and check off the things that you're actually doing right now. And then circle the things that you would wish that you did more often. So as we're doing this webinar, I want you to be able to have this as a takeaway so that we've got some tools that might help you to think through this B for the balance, right? You become aware of things that, the signs that may be interfering with that balance, and now you've got some suggestions. And what I would like to do is update this is under the other, under every one of these buckets, we can put EFT in there, right? Because EFT can be certainly approached for physical, spiritual, emotional, professional, psychological. And I'm just giving some time here to maybe put some hands up or chat to say when you're done, and then I can know when to move on.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We're on the second page there.
Beautiful. I lost the chat. There we go. We're good.
We're good?
I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah, people are done. Okay, great.
Again, this handout is, the link to this handout is in the email that you received a couple of times this week.
Yes.
And maybe, Vij, when you send out the recording, could you put the link to the handout in that email as well?
Okay, you're recording though, Nancy, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll send you the link to the recording and you can send it out.
Perfect. Okay, and I can send it out then.
Great.
I will definitely do that. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing. Continue. And here we go.
Really likes that
Yeah.
yang signal, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got the A for awareness, the B for balance, and now we're going to go into our C for connection. And this is my granddaughter and her friend, and they are about to jump off the dock into that dark water. And I think it's just an awesome image of Steve Borges' work on safety and connection. They're holding hands, they're going into something together, and I think it just shows a nice image of what that ventral vagal part of us can do for our safety and connection. But on your screen, on the last part of that balance sheet, there were 3 boxes underneath. I'm sure you saw them. And the C there is asking when you made a decision about which things you circled and you want to add into your lifestyle, or things to make a connection to yourself. It's asking to write them down in that box. And in writing things down, it gives you a 50% success rate of actually succeeding in those goals. So I encourage you to write those down to make that connection. But it's also making a commitment to yourself when you do that. All good there? Okay. And we're shifting to self-compassion. So any questions, just before I move on to self-compassion, anything about the ABC tools?
Yes, go ahead and type that in the chat box if you would. Questions that you'd like Vij to address. A question on the list of psychological signs. It says rendered ability to feel sympathy, empathy. Should it be reduced ability? That makes sense to me. So
rendered ability, rendered giving up, like giving up the ability to feel sympathy.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right,
so
rendering.
Yes. Rendered and surrendering. Yes, reduced ability would work there too. Wouldn't
it? Yeah, definitely agree.
And I just maybe comment from me is to just to remind people listening that this is all true for us as practitioners, but this is also a very helpful approach when we're working with our clients too, and helping them identify the origin of some of the symptoms that they may be experiencing.
Definitely.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, okay. So shifting to self-compassion. Would you agree that self-esteem is a marker for good psychological health? You know, in the 80s, raising my children, I certainly brought them up with the Nike swoosh, right? You can do it. And thinking that was, improving their good self-esteem. But research psychologists have identified several downsides to the endless pursuit of self-esteem, such as ego defensiveness. We defend what we think we know what's best for us. And this constant social comparison. The Facebook, I think they've actually taken it off Facebook, the number of likes, because it so affects the young population. And the anxiety right now in young people is off the roof. And I'm sure people that have any practice with young people are recognizing that. And the instability of our self-worth. But research is suggesting that self-compassion is a healthier way of relating to oneself, offering all the benefits of self-esteem without its downsides. And I studied with Kristen Neff, who was really the founder of self-compassion, and Kristen Gurman, is that the
Chris
I think
Gurman.
that's Chris Gurman. Thanks, Nancy. Chris Gurman also. They work very closely on this topic. You know, but sometimes our cultural conditioning brings up this information, right? So again, it could be topics that you deal with your own clients. And there are three, let's see, three components to self-compassion. So we'll go through these. The first one being self-kindness. So being warm towards oneself when encountering pain and personal shortcomings, rather than criticizing and hurting oneself with negative self-talk. And I don't know about you, but I think, you know, we have a lot of this inner critic. We all have an inner critic and a judge. And we're hardwired for negativity for sure. But I want to do this exercise with you, with your eyes open or closed. And I want you to imagine that, you know, a client or a family member or a coworker, a friend might approach you with a problem. And you're giving them some words of comfort, some words to deal with that situation. And I want you to just notice what those words are. If you want to write them in the chat box, you can do that. Mm-hmm. And the tone of voice that you might be offering to this person. So let's see what things are coming up for others when you're dealing with another person.
Mm-hmm. Encouragement.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What might that encouragement actually sound like? You know, what are the words of encouragement?
Yeah, what are the words? Yeah, yeah. I'm here for you.
I'm here for you.
I can see this is difficult for you.
Beautiful. Don't worry, it will be fine.
Yeah, we've got this.
Yeah, you can do this.
I've got your back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Be gentle with yourself.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Everyone in their own time, said with empathy.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. We can work on this together. I'm here to support you.
Yeah, nice, nice.
Just breathe.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all of that, because I think when other people get stuck, when they hear other people saying things, I think it, you know, it really helps others to think, you know, what's going on here. Mm-hmm. So now I want you to imagine that you have a problem. And I want you to come up with what are the words that you're using towards yourself and what is the tone of voice. And let's see what's going on there for people in the chat box.
Mm-hmm. A couple from the previous about what would you say, how would you help someone else? Would you like to go for a walk? How might I best support you right now and as this goes on? Mm-hmm. Right? Easy does it.
Easy does it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And then as we switch, oh gosh, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? As we switch to how do we treat ourselves? Yeah. Harsh. Mm-hmm. What did I do this time? Mm-hmm. How did I cause this? Wow. Right. Very critical.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. One day at a time.
Right.
With the missing eye.
Oh.
Here we go again. Right.
Yeah.
Not kindly. Yeah. Used to be, come on, get it together. Right. Now I get to be gentle with me too. Yeah. The old self was really critical and full of self-doubt. Suck it up. Yeah. I'm just not good at this. Embracing. Mm-hmm. I will try to do my best to be better so this won't happen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a real sense of difference there, isn't it, when the way that we treat others compared to how we treat ourselves. Yeah. There's a lesson here somewhere. Yeah. So, you know, the self-compassion talk is very important, that it's encouraging when we have a softer tone of voice
we can encourage ourselves. But when we've had this harsh criticism and that's all we know, that's where it comes from. So we know in the neural pathways of our brain, that's what our go-to is. And so it's needing to learn a different pathway. And with intention, we can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it motivates us to make needed changes in our lives, not because we're worthless or inadequate, but because we care about ourselves and want to lessen our suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How am I connected to my values right
Yeah.
now? How am I living my values?
Mm-hmm.
I need some more work on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Some time for self-reflection.
Yeah. All of that is really good for reflective comments.
Mm-hmm.
And the second component is common humanity, recognizing that suffering and personal failure is part of the shared human experience. And Kristen, I remember listening to one of her workshops, was telling me that she went on a flight with her autistic son when he was a little guy. And she was on a flight to England and the lights were being dimmed. It was a night flight. And he started being very scared of the dark and crying and making a noise. And Kristen was getting upset too because she wanted to be calm, and the other passengers were giving her looks, you know, and judging her. And so she picked him up and took him to the bathroom at the end of the stall. And she closed the door thinking, you know, things will get better in here, but they weren't. She was very tense and anxious. And she said in that moment, she recognized that she was suffering. And she just, you know, all the training that she'd done for herself and shared with others, she really got it in that moment. She saw her son suffering, and she was, you know, the anxiousness was creating more suffering. And so she took a breath and she recognized what was happening and shared this common humanity. And when she got into that awareness for herself, she said her son just calmed right down. And he says to her now, I want compassionate mommy when there's situations that go on at home. And I think it's such a cute story to share that.
Mm.
But it's not a word that we use often, this suffering. But, you know, we show our mask and our external face to the world when we go out and we put that armor on. But inside all of us, we know what that feels like. We know what that's like. And when we can break down these walls and share it with others, it actually builds up resilience and strength. And the last component is mindfulness, you know, this non-judgmental state of mind in which individuals observe their thoughts and feelings as they are, with acceptance, without trying to suppress or deny them, accepting them as they are. So those are the three components of self-compassion that Kristen teaches, and she gave me permission to share them. And I think they're just really important pieces of work that she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I'd like to end this little self-compassionate with an exercise. So again, eyes open, eyes closed. I'm going to read this paragraph. And so you can put your hand over your heart if you like, and just to be able to hold yourself while I read this. The heart bears the brunt of our emotional pain. Heartbreak is universal. No one makes it through this life without experiencing heartbreak at some point, and shutting down the heart seems like a reasonable response when pain is unbearable. But a heart that is shut down because there are emotions we don't want to feel, like grief at a loss or anger at a betrayal, also becomes closed off from love we most want to receive. The bottom line for compassion fatigue is learning to give love to yourself. Self-care, self-care, self-care. And open your eyes for those that did, or just come back into the room. And just check in to see how that resonates in your belief system. Was there any resistiveness there? You didn't get raised maybe with the belief that it's okay to look after yourself. to think about yourself first. You know, just like when you're traveling and you get turbulence and the oxygen mask comes down, and what are you instructed to do? Do you give it to yourself or the child? Right? And in caring for yourself, you have more self-energy available to care for others. But does that feel selfish? So where did that feel? And maybe we'll invite anybody that wants to come in the chat line to say a little bit about that. And we could maybe go through this statement at the bottom here. This is Steve Wells, his IEP work, his intentional based energy process. It's just 2 lines, but it's a very simple, powerful tapping technique. So any resistiveness, checking into your self-care. Anybody want to tap with me? Tap together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know certainly I wasn't raised with this belief system, that it was more about pull up your socks and get on with the task.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments in the chat line on any of that?
Yeah, before understanding tapping, there was no self-care.
Mm-hmm.
After learning how to tap, lots of self-care.
I believe that, and me too. You know, it was through my tapping and going back to school to be a psychotherapist that I learned that how important. I honestly would not be doing the work that I'm doing if I hadn't, done my tapping, for sure. Yeah.
I think one of the resistances we could tap on would be the critical voice that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do have an emotional attachment to that critical voice. If we didn't have the emotional attachment, it would be fading away.
Yeah.
So it's a very worthy resistance to tap on.
Yeah. And so if we tapped and said, oh, I release all the emotional attachment to my critical voice, and then if people can just sense into that maybe, and then just notice, where are you feeling it in your body right now? Just let's give a minute just to check in and just notice, where are you feeling that? In your gut, your chest,
Someone says their heart.
in the heart.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we'll use the heart if that's coming up.
My pulse. Feel it in my pulse. Or
pulse. Okay.
Solar plexus, jaw, throat.
Yeah.
Right breast.
Yeah. Right. Good. So when we get to that, then you can say your own interpretation for that, but it's all about this critical voice. So if we're using our side of the hand, we can say, I release all emotional attachment to my critical voice. And will you be my echo there, Nancy?
I sure will. I can do that work. I release all emotional attachment to my critical voice.
And I restore the right energy flow in my heart.
And I restore the right energy flow in my heart.
Perfect. And take a breath. Yeah. Nice.
Do we have time to do another one?
Yes, if anybody else is, is there an...
So we have a sharing that I'm a recovering Roman Catholic and have unlearned the belief that one is worthy only when giving to others. Right? That's well worth releasing an emotional.
Yes. So giving to others.
Yeah. So that self-care is now number one.
Yes. Yeah. And where does that person feel the energy flow?
Yeah. Where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah.
She continues, I still occasionally but rarely find myself saying, yes, I'll do that for you. But much better and healthier as a result.
Yeah.
Throat.
Okay. Let's do that.
Okay.
I release all emotional attachment.
I release all emotional attachment
to feeling unworthy of giving to others.
Of 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 feeling unworthy to giving to others. Okay.
Did I hear that right?
I'm not sure. It might be my mind not going through.
I
So
release
the belief is I'm worthy only when giving to others.
worthy only when giving to others. Sorry. So I release all emotional attachment.
I release all emotional attachment
To only feeling worthy.
To only feeling worthy
when I'm giving to others.
when I'm giving to others.
And I restore the right energy flow.
And I restore the right energy flow
in my throat.
In my throat.
And breathe. Take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2 good ones.
Yeah. Anybody else coming up for that?
We've got a lot of body parts coming, but
okay.
No other beliefs coming in the chat right now.
But if you hopefully you've taken a snapshot of those 2 lines, because that's something it's very powerful to apply that to so many areas on top of what you would normally do for your whole tapping. You could use all the tapping points and go through your system. Mm-hmm. That's just a really nice way of, doing it very simply.
Someone says, for me, it was only feeling worthy in service of my family.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got some shifts going on, lots of yawning. Yay, shift.
Nice. Oh, it's so good. So good. Very good. Okay. And this also is by Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, that they added in their self-compassion workbook, is the yin and yang of self-compassion. And using this caring force to change ourselves and our world. Again, looking at our social conditioning, bring the nurturing, caring of who we are, to bring comfort and soothing and validation in the yin side, being ourselves. But this yang is more masculine, the protecting, providing, and motivating side. But what if we could reach in, knowing that we have both yin and yang, but when we're only operating from the yin side, we're missing a lot of, standing up for ourselves, protecting ourselves, and being able to, when you do that, to be able to be coming from a place where you can give more. I feel that with curiosity and compassion, what I'm aware of in doing my own self-care is that I've created more self-energy to be me. I have the confidence to stand up, to be heard, to protect myself with boundaries when I need to, and gain clarity on my purpose to serve the clients I work with in doing the tapping and work that I've done. And so it's just a nice image to just show we do have both sides, and to support and strengthen our boundaries in the work that we do. On for the self-compassion component, and then we'll just go through a few little techniques here. Just checking them.
Mm-hmm. I'm just apologizing for the writing on this screen.
I know, I don't know what that was. Yeah.
Not you or I, but if I go ahead and remove that, then I'm also going to remove
the writing.
You and your PowerPoint, so
right.
So everyone can just
leave it
disregard it. That would be a great exercise in focusing where we want our focus to go.
No problem. Any comments on the
yeah, as speaking to the last exercise, when sharing that they feel bad for thinking only of themselves. Going back to the exercise about restoring right energy.
Right.
The emotion.
And is that a person that wants to do some tapping on that? We could do another round on that, feeling bad?
Yeah, I think, or we did a couple of examples of that. So I think that they could.
They can continue. They know how to use it. Yeah.
And then a question. So does this mean that you are still critical of yourself, but not affected emotionally by it? That's a great question.
So yes, of course, your critical voice will always be there, but your response to it is now going to be different. So the criticism can come up because it's, we are negatively biased, right? And we need to be negatively biased because as human beings going through this world, we need to look for danger. And it is a survival that we are not going to get rid of. But I think when things come up, you can certainly look at it and say, there's my critical voice, and I choose to be softer and kinder to myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different response. It's just being mindful in that moment and just checking in that, I no longer want to treat myself this way. I choose to take better care of myself. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're saying that
Mm-hmm.
we learn to treat even our critical voice with love and kindness.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so this demonstration of the hand model of the brain. So using energy psychology techniques. I don't know if everybody's familiar with this, so I thought it would be a nice, it's just a 2-minute, Dr. Dan Siegel does a great YouTube video that's like 2 minutes long that just demonstrates the brain, but it's a little bit of neuroscience to understand the stresses that are going on in our lives. So I'm using, can you all, if I put my hand up, Nancy, can you see?
Yes, for sure.
Yes?
I'm making you
Okay.
larger.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Siegel says our brain developed in 3 stages, and I'm using my wrist to demonstrate the first stage is our brain stem. So this is my neck, and my hand is representing my head. So here is my forehead on my knuckles here. Okay, so the first stage developed in the brain stem. So this part of the brain is all the autonomic responses. So the heart's beating, the lungs are expanding, your cells are dividing. It's doing all those autonomic expressions of life where you have no control over. So very much like reptilian brains here. The second part of the brain that developed is called the limbic system, and my thumb is representing the amygdala. And so this is the small almond shape of the brain that sits, there's 2 parts of it on either side, deeply embedded. And this is our fear response. So as we get information that comes into our system from our eyes, our ears, our nose, smelling, sense of skin, and we get this fear response that goes into the limbic system, the amygdala, it informs us whether there's a danger. And if there's repeated patterns of danger, it actually learns it by going into the hippocampus to learn that pattern. So whenever it's repeated, there's an automatic fear response of fight and flight. Like this is the fear response that goes on. And then surrounding that is the newest part of the brain, is called the neocortex. So this part of the brain is like 2/3 of our brain, but it's what makes us human and different than animals. It is our decision-making tool. It is our ethical responsibility. It's our creativeness and our decision-making. But when we're under stress, the older part of the brain literally hijacks the newer part of the brain, and we flip our lids, literally. So in caveman days, when we were running away from the saber-toothed tigers, we needed to have this short response, which was built for survival. But in this modern day, it could be, you're at a red light and you're running a deadline, or it could be a deadline for a project that needs to be completed. It could be, the school's called you and you have to go pick a sick one up. It could be somebody sick, or you just got a diagnosis. It could be so many things that are going on. And this chronic stress is unhealthy in our system. It leads to a lot of, the cortisol that's spilling over is causing our stress responses into many of the diseases that we have in our 21st century, which is heart attacks and blood pressures and strokes and arthritis. Anything with itis on the end of it, which is inflammatory, is caused by stress. And so it's just knowing that EFT is a great tool because it actually helps us to keep the lid on, and anything we can learn to keep the lid on to have our rational thinking brains is going to help to keep us grounded and helpful to live our lives through. So as we are faced with daily stresses, it's great to have a daily stress reduction tool that we can use to break that down. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I think that's a great visual to get. For any of you that know Donna Eden's work, holding your forehead, the oh my God points, because we have so many acupoints in our hands and for healing, she will demonstrate taking one hand to your forehead and one hand behind your neck and holding them. Again, you're bringing the energy back into your rational thinking brain. And so it makes sense after doing that demonstration why that works. And so holding there for as long. So sometimes when you're in a panic and there's no words, you're in that state, just by holding somebody like this for a little while, it'll bring the blood back into the forebrain, and then you can begin to have a conversation. The hand to the heart is the triple warmer meridian pathway. So it runs between the baby finger and the fourth finger, and so you're tapping here. But what you could do is put a hand over your heart and then tapping it, and that calms down triple warmer, which is the stress response. Dr. Dan Siegel also saying that our bodies are a container, and sometimes we lose that when we're under stress. And to ground ourselves, you can put one hand underneath your right hand underneath your left arm. So remembering it's the one closest to your heart, and then your left goes over your right. So you're almost giving yourself a hug, and you're feeling the container of who you are. And that can be very comforting when you're feeling stressed. And then lastly, of course, we have our EFT for self-care. And Nancy teaches in our NEFTY training of bronze, silver, and gold. And the bronze is what we've been doing at the beginning when I said to write down the three things. We did a little bit of tapping, and so mindlessly and not having words connected to it. And the silver style is about going online, because there are thousands of free scripting that you can pick up online. But the gold standard is working with a practitioner that can personalize your condition and be able to work with you. And so our EFT standards are there. And there's the tapping points. And then I'm just showing the X on that one that you can use as to calm down triple warmer. And then I've also put the finger points on there to remind you that you can, especially if you're in meetings or in places of public that you don't want to be necessarily seen because it does look a little ridiculous, then you can use the sides of your hands to fingertips to use that. And then lastly, we're just going to go back to the questions. If you take a look at the 3 stresses you wrote at the beginning of our hour together, and see if you feel any differently towards them now. And just check in to the chat line there. Mm-hmm. And I think that just brings us up over the hour, so I think we made
yes
time.
follow up on the last question that you answered about, so does that mean that you're still critical of yourself but not affected emotionally by it?
Mm-hmm.
And so then this person says, yes, that makes sense what you said, because then there isn't shaming for being
Yeah,
critical.
right.
Right? It's a shift in the mindset, that
Yeah.
shift in perception that makes all the difference.
Yeah. So nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd be curious about, as people look at these three stressors they wrote down,
Mm-hmm.
what what are the thoughts that are coming through them now about those
Mm-hmm.
stressors or about themselves? Is
Right.
there some kindness,
Yeah.
compassion coming through?
Yeah. I really feel it's a really great antidote to compassion fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you're also open to questions, Vij?
Absolutely. Yep. I'm open to questions. So yeah, anybody feeling differently towards the sense of self, the beliefs around giving to others, caring for others. Is that helpful? Is it?
Just waiting to see if we get some questions coming on the chat line. So thank you for the handout. Great resource and very helpful information, someone says.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, someone else says, I really appreciate the handout. There's a ton of information in that handout. That's
There it is. I worked very hard on that. Yeah. That was my project for doing that program.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a mother, this will always be a struggle. What do you talk about that, Vij? I think as a mother, this will always be a struggle.
Struggle in what? In what way? What's the struggle about? There's lots of things being a mom.
So if I'm not getting this right, give me some more information about this. But yes, and speaking from personal experience, I still find motherhood to be one of the most challenging places to bring self-compassion to myself. Oh my gosh, it is so easy to bring that for my child.
Sure, how I've looked at that. I mean, I have 4 girls that I've raised, and I certainly, when they were little, for sure, because they're so dependent on you, right? Because you have to be there. There is a lot that you have to give up, and certainly you're not going out to do the things that you would have when you were single. I mean, there is a shift in what you can do for your personal self, but making time, I think, is so important, so that you do have the energy to do the caring for your children. Mm-hmm. And I think as they get older, what I also encourage is you're a role model to your children. So when you have problems and stresses, and they are looking to you, how are you solving these problems? What is your energy like? How are you reacting to things that are going on? Actions are so much more powerful than words. Mm-hmm. So they notice all of these things that are going on. So I think when they see you, going for a walk, when they see you taking a break, when they see you listening to music or dancing around or having fun, or those are all, great role modeling for, life is tough, but you know what, we're creating some fun here. We're creating some optimism and some hope. Mm-hmm. Because if they see you struggling and they're little and they're looking up to you, is this the world they're growing up into? That's hard, right? It's like that critical voice and that self-compassionate voice. Mm-hmm. It's having that difference.
So what kind of words would you use for someone who's experiencing, the famous mother guilt? Mm-hmm. You know what that is. I'm not doing well enough. I'm not the perfect mother. I'm blah, blah, blah. So as a blanket term, mother guilt.
Yeah.
How would you bring self-compassion to that?
Yeah. Well, I'd certainly be aware of it. ABC, right? Awareness that that's the way you meet it where you're at. So if that's where you're feeling it, then, even though I have this mother guilt, I choose to care for myself the best way I can. Or even though I have this mother guilt, I choose to break this pattern now. Even though I have this mother guilt, I have a new appreciation of showing my children a different way of being, and I need to practice that too for myself.
Yeah.
Right. And just practicing will teach your neural pathways in the brain a different way of being. These all come from core beliefs, right? Likely this guilty is being passed on. And then you only know what you know. And then when you learn new information, it's about, well, does this land for me? Does it make me feel better to think this way? And if it's a yes, then you go towards practicing new ways.
Yeah.
Until it becomes a habit. It's like any new habit. It takes effort, right? Because you have to stop, you have to think about it, and you have to practice it. So it is effort. But if there's good motivation to do that, because children certainly motivate you from your heart, right? I think that helps.
Yes, especially when we know the emotions are contagious, right? So
Absolutely.
you're offering something that's going to be taken up by their little nervous systems.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to be self-compassion or whether that's going to be self-judgment.
And children are so, they're so open to being, they feel your energy. They're so open to that. And so they notice, they're so intuitive around your emotions. Even though you put this mask on that covers up, they sense when you're off. They know when you don't feel good. Yeah.
So lots of appreciation coming for you for the handouts. And also, someone says, I really believe modeling, as you said, Vij, is very important. We have issues from generations that were not as healthy, and we can shift them so they don't repeat them. That's my greatest motivation, person says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's on the call. I'm doing the TOOT level 2, the trauma, tapping out of trauma 2.
Yes.
And part of it is talking about intergenerational trauma. It's very interesting.
Yes, exactly. I did a Facebook Live today in the NEFTY community talking about the course I'm taking with integrating family constellations with energy psychology, EFT, and looking at how it goes beyond the intergenerational trauma into the cultural trauma, and how important it is that this generation is tackling this as our job.
Yeah, maybe sharing the little what did I listen to recently? That it was called the Cherry Blossom. It was a study on cherry blossoms with mice. Did you hear about that?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It's great because it just showed that, like Pavlovian's dog, every time the mice smelt the cherry blossoms, they would get this, little zap. So in time, they would learn to just react without getting the zap, but just the smell of the cherry blossoms. And then the next generation of mice didn't even need to get the zap. They smelled cherry blossoms and they reacted like their parents did. And it actually went through 4 generations before it moved out of the system.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Yeah. So it just goes to show the energy that gets passed on through our DNA. So sometimes when you're off or you're worried and you think, I've got no reason to feel like this, it's question it. Maybe it's maybe it's generational stuff that you're dealing with. And that's all tappable too.
It's all tappable in this moment here today, right? Even though it may have sourced from previous generation, past lives, whatever people's beliefs are around all of that. It's all in, as Eckhart Tolle says, right? It's the power of now. It's in this moment, the energy is here in this moment. And
when we can bring it into our consciousness, it can shift.
Beautiful. Nice. Well, I think we are, we have a comment here about, I've let my girls know I could have done a better job in certain aspects of raising them, and let them know it was the first time I've been in the role as mother, and opening the conversation to healing relationships. So modeling that, the intention is not to be perfect, right?
None of us came with a handbook, did we? We just, yeah, whatever works at the time, right? We have to be kind to ourselves, because it's not intentional. When you have to go out to work and leave children in difficult situations that you don't like, you do what you have to do, and you have to put food on the table, a roof over the head.
Absolutely.
And it's quality time then, but and that can shift and change. And you know what, you always have opportunities to repair relationships.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Even if you weren't perfect, we are imperfect beings.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's great. We just commented, just as you said that, about in the chat room, I live by the motto that none of us is perfect beyond our imperfect perfection. There are no perfect parents.
No.
Etc.
Yeah, I have these little 3 sentences by my desk, and it says, I'm imperfect, I'm good enough, and I love myself.
Beautiful. We've got one last question for you, Vij, and you don't need to answer that. You may want to think about this, but the question is, would you be willing to share your slide deck? So you can think about that. If that is something you're willing to do, it could go out in the follow-up email with the recording, but that's up to you. Okay.
I feel strongly about this content, and if it can go out to more people, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, and the handout is something I give freely everywhere I go, because it was my work to do that, and I think more people that know the signs and sharing them, so we can prevent people from getting into that red zone. I think it's important work. So yes, I'm happy to share.
That's great. Thank you. Whoops. Okay.
We're happy to do workshops too for other people that want to.
That's great.
And I maybe also could put a plug.
I'm failing at my job here, trying to keep everybody muted.
Okay.
I think we're good.
I just wanted to also put a plug in for my self-publishing book, hopefully before the end of the year. And it's on more practical ways for shifting stress for healthcare workers and caregivers.
Beautiful.
So I can send that out when it's being published.
That's lovely. Well, I'll say thank you on behalf of all our participants this evening. And there's a lot of gratitude coming for you in the chat line. So I'll extend that from everyone to you. And thank you, Vij. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And what a valuable use of our time to stop and reflect and spend some time focusing on self-compassion and how important it is and to do this kind of work. So thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night. Good night. Bye-bye.